Tommy Thayer every Friday at 3:30. What's up, Tom?
You know, Chase isn't throwing the ball to himself. I see you guys have that whole argument. Yeah. You don't bring up Joe Burrow's name one time, who is an incredibly talented guy who, you know, when he's got something good going, he's going to stick with it until they stop it.
It's so funny you mentioned that too, Tom, because a lot of the throws he made were beautiful throws that most guys can't make, and then they were run after the catch moments. So there are plenty of guys that would have never been able to get the ball to Jamar Chase.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
You know, I mean, and that's the thing about it is, you know, it's like a repeat performance. If you got something good going, it's like that one time when the Bears were playing the San Francisco 49ers on Jerry Rice Day, and Terrell Owens had like 21 catches. You know, just because they're catching the ball every time, it doesn't mean you don't keep going to them.
So, Tom, what would you have done last night if you were the Bengals after scoring the touchdown on the road in Baltimore?
I mean, kicking it or going for two?
Would you have gone for two, or would you have kicked it and lived for overtime potentially?
I would have gone for two. Didn't we just learn that lesson with the Kansas City Chiefs and the Tampa Bay? When you get the expression of Baker Mayfield when they lose the coin toss and he knows exactly what's going to happen. Because I think if it's circumstances are different and it's a first or second quarter, then you kind of live with the next play. When you get your backs up against the wall and you give it to a guy like Lamar, there's no telling what he's capable of doing to either extend a play, break a tackle, get into the end zone, get into field goal position. And then they got one of the best kickers in the National Football League, even though he missed an extra point. So
I mentioned, too, Tom, what I liked about what the Bengals did, too, and I would have gone for it as well. I liked that operationally they were clean. They tried to get the Ravens to jump off sides and make that an even shorter get, because they had a timeout in their pocket. So, those are the little things that really always catch my attention with regard to coaching. Now, I would have preferred that they try to throw that ball to Jamar Chase and not a backup tight end. Right. But I think that at least their attempt, Tom, to try to get Baltimore to jump off sides was one of those hidden things that coaches that would be on a coaching tape for me.
Yeah, I don't know how easy that is when you're playing on the road, because you're not going to have cooperative crowd noise. You're going to try to give signals over the top of any type of crowd noise that you're hearing. And you know, if he's in shotgun, you know, it's too difficult to try to get him to jump. If you're underneath center, maybe you have a little bit more influence on the two defensive tackles trying to get them to jump.
Visiting with Tom Thayer on Waddle and Sylvie. Jesse sitting in for Sylvie here. All right, let's focus on Sunday at Soldier Field, Tommy. The injury report came out. Tell us the Bears can beat this team with a decimated offensive line, because we need to hear that from you.
You know, they can, because, you know, these guys are on an NFL roster because they have the qualifications in order to be evaluated as legitimate backups or starters if they have to go in and play in a moment's notice. So it's not like they just went and, you know, had a job fair at the local junior college to bring in a couple offensive linemen. These guys have been there since the beginning of OTAs, throughout all of training camp, and up into this point. So, you know, whether you're talking about Kearns or Ryan Bates or Matt Pryor or whomever you're talking about, they have the qualifications to be on a roster.
Tom, what is in your opinion, what is their best option in terms of right guard and right tackle?
To me, you know, first of all, if you're happy with the inside with Pryor, Tevin, and Coleman, then I try to maybe get some input from the guys that are left, and that'd be Bourne, Kearns, and I would have to throw Matt Pryor in that, you know, selection committee as well, because if you felt that he gives you a better, more powerful opportunity at right tackle, and then Ryan Bates fits in at right guard, where he's probably he's better suited to play guard than he is center from what I've seen. And so I have to figure out, you know, who gives me the best chance to secure a pocket and sustain pass protection, because that's what I'm concerned about. I think any offensive lineman, no matter where you put them, they're capable of being run blockers. It's about when you put them and have sustained unprotected pass protection where you're an offensive tackle and you're on an island. Whomever can do that the best and the longest for Caleb, that would be the selection that I would go with. And I would have to investigate Matt Pryor. He's a big man. He's got a lot of a blocking radius. He's got good feet. And if you think that you can gain a little bit more power with him at tackle, then I would investigate that opportunity as well.
Tom, my expectation, I'm wondering what yours is teams are going to try to mimic what the Cardinals did and try to pressure Caleb Williams into making some mistakes. What do you expect to see from the Patriots, and how do you believe that they counter that on Sunday?
I 100% agree with you, T. Waddle. I think from the Commanders game onto the Arizona game and now going forward, even though they're playing at home, you're going to see a 6- and 7-man line of scrimmage. When the Bears break the huddle, they're going to try to put a rookie quarterback through a thinking process of what he just said in the huddle, how it pertains to the protection, and where his vulnerabilities lie. And then if you get through that vulnerability and he escapes the pocket, do you have coverage downfield that you can either force him into a bad throw or make him hold on to the ball to allow that your rush to get to him? And so this is something the Bears are going to have to work themselves out of. Now, if you can, excuse me, if you can break the huddle a little bit earlier, give him a little evaluation at the line of scrimmage, and then have control of the cadence and be a little bit more, deceptive with the cadence. So maybe you can get a guy to jump, or maybe you can get them to show, give you a tell or something before the ball is ever snapped. And that plays into the hands of the Bears. They did a nice job of it with their 2 games at home between the Rams and Carolina. And I still consider the Jacksonville game a home game because of the crowd support was on behalf of the Bears. And I think one thing that they're going to have to do is they're going to have to allow Caleb to work the cadence with a little more efficiency to see if he can get those tells from the defense.
I would not be surprised if we saw a lot of yak from DJ Moore, even Kmet back in the game plan more. Not, I know he's in the game plan, but more opportunities for him where those blitzes come in. There's some quick throws to DJ, and he takes off after the fact, especially against this defense, which is not exactly one of the best in the league. I think this is where you get some run after the catch, and there's some short passes going on.
Jess, one thing about that is you got to understand your hot read. And Tom Waddle can speak better this than I can, because I think when you see experienced quarterbacks that have a lot of time behind center and they think that there's a team that's going to pressure them a little bit more and they understand the hot reads and they make that throw a couple times, and they're going to start backing off the line of scrimmage. And so that's what you're going to have to do. And if you do have the yards after catch, every one of these guys, DJ, Keenan, Rome, Cole, Gerald Everett, DeAndre Swift, Roshan, they're all qualified athletes. And if you can get the ball into their hands with a little bit of momentum, you're going to be talking about those extra yards after catch. And if you can get them to really add up at the end result of the offensive performance, you're going to talk about these guys putting themselves in better scoring positions where it's going to have to result in touchdowns from here on out the rest of the season. Able to do it against the Commanders because the defense held those guys to 9 points and field goal. So if Caleb is accurate, I think they could do some big things offensively.
Tom, as somebody like yourself that played for a very long time, has covered football for an exceptionally long time as well, if you sat down with Caleb for 15, 20 minutes, based on what you've seen him do to this point, how would you kind of consult with him? And what would you say to him in hopes of trying to get him on track?
Don't be a savior. Take what's offered you. And listen, I admire Caleb, man. I think this dude is legit. He's got it, whatever the it factor is, and he's got a bright future ahead of him. But on that first defended pass in the very first drive against Keenan Allen, Cole Kmet was open for about 7 or 9, right? And then if you get the touchdown attempt to Keenan Allen, DJ Moore was wide open on the goal line. So I'm just saying, Caleb, you don't have to look to bide extra seconds and try to make it a 6-second protection. If there is the underneath route that's wide open with what Jesse talked about, yards after catch, then go there, because I think some of the simplest approach is the most effective approach, rather than trying to have the smallest window of opportunity on an NFL level and try to fit it into a player that's getting ready to run out of the back of the end zone or going in a sideline route and getting ready to run out of bounds. Just take what's offered you. And I think that's could help Caleb the most. Yeah.
Visiting with Tom Thayer here on Waddle and Sylvie on ESPN 1000. For people that haven't heard you all week, various times on the station, and I want to get to the I want to talk about Sunday, but I have to go back a little bit because I think it impacts Sunday, and it's what's maybe bubbling under the surface, and it's the response last week in Arizona and the way they got run over on defense. We've been talking all offense here. They got just gashed on defense. The response was so poor. I'm sort of worried about this next response. Like, Tommy, what did you see from Washington to Arizona to this week that is maybe not about X's and O's and something more?
Jess, that's after watching the tape a couple of times, one of the things that was kind of alarming to me in this past game only, and that's the thing that was alarming about it, is that you hear that expression, you get a hat on a hat. Yeah. And so these offensive players were blocking the defensive players for a sustained period of time. So when you look at who was leading the team in tacklers, I think it was 3 defensive backs and then the 2 linebackers, and Jacob Martin was in 7th on the list in the leading defensive lineman of tackles. And so what you're going to have to do is you're going to have to be better at initiating contact against the offender, being able to fundamentally disengage and still stay in the position that the huddle's called for. If you think that you're going to run around blocks or you're going to take a poor angle of approach, or else you're going to allow an offensive lineman sustain a block against you and move you 2 or 3 yards out of position, that's when you're going to see these creases develop and then have some explosive runs. But I do think that the Bears' front 7 will answer the bell in this game, and they'll be in charge of the defense this week. And I'm telling you, it's not something that I was alarmed. I was just kind of alarmed at in this one game that they were being blocked and they were being sustainedly blocked.
And what's crazy, too, is I think that Sanborn played better than 50% of the snaps, too, which means they were in a base defense. Correct. Much more than they normally would be, and that's also because Gordon isn't there. And you're 100% right, Tom. Their top 3 tacklers in this game were Hicks, Stevenson, and Byard, which is, I know you want your safeties involved, but my goodness, it is a good point. Tell the people out there, Tom, and I'm not making light of this. I'm being 100% serious. The loss of Billings is enormous, especially when you also factor in that Brisker, one of your other safeties, isn't there to help and run support. Mm-hmm. But losing the big guy is not something to overlook.
Yeah, he's a block of a man. You're just not going to come there and bring in a 330, 325-pounder who's got some serious weight room strength. And he also organizes the defensive calls where they slide right to left, and sometimes they can bring on a couple of false start penalties by the offensive line when he gives that sudden move call. But you don't have that template behind him waiting in the wings where you're not going to bring in another 6'3", 325-pounder, because whether it's Zach Pickens or you put DeMarcus Walker in there, or you got Chris Williams or even Javon Dexter Sr., who could be a candidate for that position and play the position rather with leverage and bulk. He plays it with length and athleticism, and just 2 different styles of player at that position. But, yeah, you're right, T. Waddle. Andrew Billings, his loss is significant because he also kind of, carries that swagger torch out of the locker room for all the defensive linemen.
Yeah.
Well, they need a big response because after this, the schedule gets really tough.
I was just going to say real quick, Tom, there's no chance this team, based on how they have performed the last 2 weeks, is looking past the Patriots at the Packers.
No way.
Are they?
No way.
Yeah.
No way.
Okay.
I think it's let's get this thing back on track, and then we get ready to get it into our division, and let's roll down the stretch and finish this AFC grouping of the teams you played on the high note.
Those division games are going to be something. All right, Tommy, we'll be listening
Tom.
Sunday.
Thanks,
you and Joniak. Be well.
See you then.
There you go. Tom Thayer right here on Waddle and Sylvie. We'll take a break. If you want to react to what Tom had to say, 312-332-3776 is the number. And maybe we glossed over it, but just so people know, Braxton Jones and Darnell Wright have been declared out for this game.
Yes.
So it's a makeshift line once again.
My guess is you're going to get Bates at right guard and Pryor at right tackle. I would think that's where they would go, but that's not my
And you know,
domain.
Braxton practiced yesterday, so you got to think he's closer. So maybe next week where I don't want to say, like, you need him more next week than this week.
No, you're 100%
if they can
correct.
get even an ugly win this week.
No doubt. I think you're onto something there.
And you play one game without Billings, maybe you figure out a little bit. You know, I don't want to use this as an exhibition game, but you almost have to.
No,
in
you're
some
right.
ways,
And
know?
you can't take anyone, especially this
Right.
group that hasn't really proven themselves. You can't take any team lightly, but I agree with you 100%. If there's any doubt at all, let him heal for another week before you get into the meat of your
Remember,
division schedule.
you've been very good at home. As much as they've been terrible on the road, they've been very good at home.